My name's Andrew Perrin. I'm currently 20 years old. I'm enrolled in Hunter College as a visiting student. And in New York, my hobby is reptiles. I have a few other animals, but I focus on reptiles. I'm a reptile hobbyist. When I was very young, there was a friend of mine, a really good friend, and he had a fish tank. And I was mesmerized by this tank. All the fish going in and out of little caves. There was one big black fish in the back, and he would only come out when you turned the light off. I was obsessed. I was so into fish. I loved fish so much. I was like, I'm going to become a marine biologist. That is my dream. And I worked really hard. I even got into a marine biology college up in New Haven, Connecticut. When I started going there, I was so excited. But as I started going and attending the lessons, I started learning that becoming a marine biologist wasn't really taking care of fish. It was more studying them, going out into different places, measuring how high waves are and how deep the sand goes and what composition the sand is. And it was just getting further and further away from what I really wanted to do. But a little bit before, I started getting into reptiles. And I knew that, hey, what I want to do is I don't want to go out and research. I just want to take care of animals. And that's how I really turned my focus away from fish and towards reptiles. I'll always still love fish, but my passion is towards reptiles now. Dogs and cats are great, but when it comes to reptiles, there's simply no comparison. The first thing I could get when I was a kid was a fish, because I had a cat allergy and dogs were pretty much no in the building. My building didn't allow dogs of large sizes, and small dogs, my parents didn't want that because they thought they'd be taking care of it. So the first thing I had was a fish, something nice and simple that was easy to take care of. And once I proved myself with the fish, I moved on to more complicated things. Still simple though, like frogs, and finally reptiles. Once I found reptiles, the ease of care and how easy it was to clean their tanks took me off my feet. It was so simple to take care of. They were personable, more friendly than the fish, and you can hold them. That was pretty much the big thing for me, and I can keep a lot of them in a small space, which is why it's perfect for someone living in a New York City apartment. I don't want to overwater this tank, but sometimes I end up underwatering it. The drainage layer isn't very good, so the plants tend to either do really well or really poorly. And this one's on its final legs, and this one's kind of declining. But it's looking really good today. Those leaves are looking crisp. A couple of things I do to care for my reptile is one, they all need to eat. And the vast majority eat crickets. So every week I get a box of 1,000 crickets in. I get my bucket out. I pour in some calcium powder, some vitamin powder. I put in some crickets, I mix it up, and then I go through the rounds. Go from each tank, placing the crickets that they need inside and moving on to the next. The second thing that I do is I help some of them shed. It's not all the time they need help, but with the bigger ones and the ones with harder scales, typically, they need a good soak when they're shedding. Such as the larger skinks, like the blue-tongued skinks.
How long does the shedding process take on average?
Depends. Different animals, different times. This one sheds pretty quick. Just because this one's scales are bigger and they come off a lot easier. A lot of different reptiles eat their own shed. This one does not. The third and fourth thing that I do is lighting and temperature. They're very similar and very different in many ways. Lighting is incredibly important for reptiles, especially UVB. UVB is that ultraviolet light from the sun. Reptiles need that. It's the only way they can process calcium. Some reptiles don't need it as much as others, such as nocturnal reptiles like geckos and other things that mainly live under rocks and stuff. But reptiles that are bright colors, that spend most of their time outside, they need that UVB, especially when they're young. If they don't get that UVB, they can suffer from a disease called MBD, which is metabolic bone disease, which can be crucial for their health. When it comes to heating, they need to be at the right temperature. If they drop below their temperature, they'll just stop eating and they'll starve. So you need to make sure each reptile is at the right temperature. That's why the ambient temperature in this room is 85 degrees, with the air conditioning on, regulating it at that. So then all the reptiles can get that 85 temperature, and then I can put heat lamps on the enclosures as well to either heat up certain areas a little bit higher or lower than they need to be. Like this big silver tube behind me is cooling this tank because this one specifically gets a little bit too hot. However, you want to create a heat gradient, which basically means you want one side of the tank to be hotter than the other side of the tank. That way your animal has options. If it wants to be hotter, it can move towards the hotter side, and if it wants to be cooler, it can move towards the cooler side. That way it can regulate its own temperature. Now it's time to introduce you to some of our little friends. This is a Maruki blue-tongued skink. They come from, where their name suggests, Maruki. Different localities of blue-tongued skink come from all over the world, everywhere from the Himalayas to Iran to Australia. They're one of the most widely spread species of skink. However, the different localities mean they have different care and slightly other variations in between them. The whole thing that skinks go for is they have a big blue tongue. And this big tongue, what it does is it tells other predators that they're poisonous, but they're not. They're completely fine. Their tongue even comes out and it flowers out when they want to fend off a predator. But their entire body is long, lean, and they have those black legs. So if they're on the ground, most predators with their black legs can blend into the ground. So they think the blue-tongued skink is a fat snake. And then with that blue tongue on top of it, it looks like a venomous fat snake. Since they have such a variety of a diet, they won't go after just live prey. They'll go after dead things, even some fruits and vegetables, making them more of a scavenger than a predator. This survival strategy has made them so successful in so many different climates and places that their overall design has not really adapted much through all these separate climates. The only variations of differences is the patterning on their back and their slight shade in color being more preferable in various different climates. This is a wedge tree frog, also known as a Dumpty frog. They hail from two places, Australia and New Guinea. Most of the Australian varieties you can't find in the States because they've either been bred out to be impure or because Australia has a trade ban on animals, so you can find very few in the United States. This is a more common variety in the pet trade. This is a New Guinea White's frog, also known as the Dumpty frog. As they grow larger, their flabs will start to grow over their eyes and ears to make them look even bigger, which hence the name, the Dumpty frog. In the wild, they breed during the rainy season, and they will make a various assortment of calls towards the other frogs. Even though there's so many frogs where they live, they can pick out the calls of their own species from miles away. Well, originally I wanted to become a marine biologist, but the more I found out about that career when I was in college for it, I learned that it wasn't really what I wanted to do at all. So I started going out and trying to research what I wanted to do. And I finally came at zookeeping. It's pretty much what I've already been doing. So I started volunteering at the Bronx Zoo this spring. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, it is an online program. However, it still gives me valuable networking experience, and it's teaching me more about animals. And I've looked at a college in upstate New York, Watertown. It has a brilliant 2-year program that's very hands-on. Once I finish that 2-year college, I'll have one of two options. One, I'll either go back to the Bronx Zoo with the networking I've done this spring at the volunteer program, or B, go back to school, study up more, and then either try again for the Bronx Zoo or go to a privately owned reptile zoo. I'm hoping for option A. My end goal is to become a zookeeper at the Bronx Zoo or at a privately owned reptile zoo. And if I make enough money, start my own place.